Hello, welcome to the AppleInsider Podcast. I'm William Gallagher. Our sponsors this week are Square, Claude by Anthropic, and Nordstellar. Now, while regular co-host Wesley Hilliard is off getting married, we've seen photos, it went very well, I would like to welcome not a stand-in, not a replacement, but a special star guest, AppleInsider Managing Editor Mike Worthley. Now, Mike.
Yeah, it's been a few years. It's been a few years since I've been on the show.
Yeah, there might be a reason for that, because the last time, as good as you were on the podcast, I remember having to bleep you out many, many times. But fortunately now, everything around Apple is much more sane and calm, isn't it?
Right? Oh no, you're going to bleep me out several times again today.
Okay.
I can personally guarantee that.
Right. I believe last time I bleeped you out with the sound of a Mac startup bleep. I'll try to find something like that sometime.
That works for me.
Yeah. But let's go in the thing that I think you might start. Let's go straight for it. What you might find contentious. iPhone Air is dead. It is absolutely doomed. Total failure. That's what at least some analysts are saying, or at least the ones who aren't saying it's a massive success. What's going on?
So this happens every year. And it happens every year in late October, early November, where Apple tunes up their deliveries. So Apple uses this thing called just-in-time manufacturing, which means they only have between 30 and 60 days of parts available and less than 30 days of active inventory available, sometimes much, much less. So what we've got right now is a situation where Apple has overestimated the initial demand for the iPhone Air. There's been a big swing toward the Pro models this year. And I think that has impacted the Air. And when I reviewed the iPhone Air, I said exactly this. I said that don't put a lot of stock into this. There's going to be a lot of, oh my God, the iPhone Air is doomed, it's dead, it's dying. But what's important for everyone to remember, and the analysts never remember this, is the first 3 months of iPhone sales are dominated by the Pro models. It's the people that upgrade once a year. It's the people on the iPhone upgrade program who get a Pro. These are not people mostly who just broke their iPhones and just need something. This is mostly not mom and pop America buying their first iPhone or something like that. The iPhone Air is only really just getting started. It is a little too compromised for me to be happy with. The battery is a problem for me. The single camera is a problem for me. But it's not going to be a problem for most everybody. When the non-pro buying season kicks off in about the beginning of December, I think we're going to start seeing a shift from the Air. And mainstream media likes to think that if orders are cut for the Air now, that means that for some reason Apple can't turn those numbers back up, which is ludicrous. That is an insane statement in the interest of headlines that will get attention.
So is it fair to say that Apple has a certain amount of capacity and it uses that capacity on whatever's selling most at the moment?
I think this has got more to do with money than it does capacity. If Apple really wanted, they could make sure that they have all the iPhones they need in a year before December. But why do that? Because then you might be stuck with 50 million iPhone 5Cs in a warehouse somewhere. Right?
Yes.
Why not use just in time? That's what Tim Cook was hired for. So there's a little bit of history of this. Apple has institutional knowledge about why stocking up inventory is a really bad idea. So in 1995, Apple had two Mac lines. They had the Performer line and they had the Power Mac line. There was overlap. There were a million different SKUs and so forth. Like, for instance, the Performa 475 was a 68040 LC. It was the LC3. And at places like Sears and Montgomery Ward, they had like 10 SKUs based on different RAM and hard drive configurations and what was bundled in the box. So I forget exactly how many SKUs it was. It was over 100. I don't remember how many over 100 it was, but it wasn't.
Actually, I can say something you might not know. There are certain US models where there was a Performer and there was a non-Performer version, and then
the Centris
in the
version,
UK, the Centris, the Quad, God, the names come back. But the same thing would have a fractionally different model name here in the UK. Like we had slightly different Apple TV things. Let's not get into how many times Apple TV is used in an average sentence.
I love that black Apple TV though.
Yes. But mine was white, and I don't think that came out in the States.
It didn't. The States version of the Apple TV in 1995 was black. That's correct.
Which looked a lot better. I thought, but I loved that one I had. But sorry, yes. So there's like this mass of product names and things like this, and it was just I found deeply confusing at the time.
So anyway, they had over 100 SKUs. I don't know how many of those were international or anything like that, but when you'd go into Sears, they'd tell you there were 10 different models, and they had them all in stock, and you could walk out with one today. So, but they got hosed in 1995. They completely misjudged what was going to sell and what wasn't, and it affected, they call it the Power Mac crisis of 1995. It wasn't just that. It was the entire product line. They had 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 of these SKUs and 0 of this other one. So Apple, that led directly to Steve Jobs coming back. That year led directly to them bringing him back to the company, and that led directly to Steve Jobs hiring Tim Cook, because Tim Cook was a master of this at Compaq and the other companies that he worked for. So instead of having 50 million iPhone Airs, they built X amount of iPhone Airs, which is still more than they needed at launch. So it would not surprise me at all if in January, February, we start getting the doom and gloom about, oh my God, iPhone Pro models have been cut back, and
yes.
iPhone 17 and iPhone Air orders are back. So it's a cycle. It's been like this every year for at least a decade. So there are a lot of iPhone is doomed headlines that I've seen in the last week, and that's kind of not right. I understand that it's not selling as much as Apple wanted, which is why they're not making as many right now. But I think that's going to come around in the next 5 months, because let's be frank, it's a sexy phone. It's thin, it's light, it's pocketable, and celebrities have been seated with it. You're going to see it more and more and more, and you're going to see it more and more and more around Christmas time.
Well, I do want to ask you about that because you've reviewed it and I've only briefly used one. But I should say, before I forget, AppleInsider Plus this week, it's all about what you might call the problematic fourth phone. Like for 5 years now, Apple's been releasing 4 models in September, and 3 of them always seem to be a hit. In AppleInsider Plus this time, I'm going to take you through what Apple has definitely done, what it looks like this means it's going to do next. And AppleInsider Plus, I didn't say, is the extended, and it's the ad-free version of the podcast. Details of it are in the show notes, as always. But of course, the short version is that you can subscribe through Patreon or Apple Podcast subscriptions, and it would be so good to have you with us. But
yeah, we'd love that.
It would just, I really enjoy AppleInsider Plus because it's obviously topical, but it's about the world of all of this, all these things we're using and that we generally like because we've chosen them, but we have some gripes as well. It's about that rather than the news of the week, and it's a treat to do it. But I just said you've reviewed the iPhone Air and I've held it for a few minutes. Am I an idiot for saying this? I didn't feel that it was as thin as everybody was saying.
Well, I mean, a lot of that is hand feel, right? And that's kind of very person to person. I stopped buying the Pro Max phones just because it started feeling like I was holding just a slightly smaller iPad Mini in my hand. My go-to device is the Pro model. And until last year, it was the iPhone 13 Pro, and I have a 16 Pro right now. Pro tip, if you're getting into tech writing, you don't get to keep the stuff you're reviewing.
No.
And I'm going to run that for a few years. The iPhone Air was notably thinner in my hand than my Pro, which is my daily driver. It felt a lot to me like the iPhone 4 going from an iPhone 3GS. It was a little more comfortable in my hand than the Pro is, but I'm not the sort that walks around with the Pro in my hand, video documenting my life or talking on the phone as I'm going to the Apple store or anything like that. My phone is very much a pull it out of my pocket, check something quick, put it back in my pocket.
Right.
So I think the folks that notice it more would be the people that are iPhone primary, that where the iPhone is their primary device and their Mac is their secondary device, if they even have one.
Those strange people.
For me, the Mac being my primary device the iPhone is a peripheral to it. So
it's funny you're saying there that what the move between moving from an iPhone to the iPhone Air is like. It suddenly reminded me. I realised the iPhone Air feels to me the way the iPhone 6 did. I mean, that was more rounded and it was obviously smaller, but there was something about it. I quite liked my iPhone 6. I didn't actually want to buy it. My iPhone 5 collapsed on the way to an event, and I had to urgently get something. So I didn't do the usual thing of exploring. It's just, what's the cheapest? How can I have it? Goodbye, kind of thing. But in retrospect, it was a nice model. And of course, there are rumours that curves are coming back later, but that's going into the future for it. iPhone Air right now, I take your point that it's people a bit more like me. I mean, I'm a Mac obsessive, but I do use my iPhone pretty much constantly. The only reason it isn't in my hand right now is I'm talking to you for it. So maybe I should go back and have another look at them. But it seemed to me, though, that I asked you originally about Apple is doomed, the usual thing, because iPhone Air sales disastrous or fine, couldn't tell. The rest of the range seems to be doing very well, and quite slowly, analysts seem to be coming round to that ahead of Apple's next earnings call. So right now, it looks like the consensus is, well, weirdly, that Apple's going to beat the consensus for earnings, specifically because of iPhone 18 sales, but also the forever promise of Apple Intelligence coming next. Are analysts ever right?
No. That's the short answer. The long answer is that they have more awareness of Apple's supply chain and what they feel Apple should do to make money for people versus what Apple will actually do for their consumers. So they are right about their financial slice of the pie, whereas I do not give a about Apple's earnings or stock price.
I should say
not the smallest piece. It is.
I was standing by with the bleeping button, and there it was. Okay,
yep.
But yeah,
Yep.
Thank you.
It's so there is a stunning lack of awareness in the analyst community about use of devices. They see the iPhone as so. Notably, they are still fixated just on iPhone sales, and I admit that it is a cash cow. But when Apple stopped reporting volume device sales, the writing was clearly on the wall that they wanted people to focus on other things. That's the funny thing about the law of big numbers. When you sell millions and millions and millions of devices a year, it's not linear growth anymore. It can't be linear growth anymore.
Yeah.
You have saturated the market. You have done what you can, and now you're in a replacement cycle. And we've been in that replacement cycle for the iPhone for years, and only now are some of these analysts who give us their notes, and I just kind of shake my head and say, okay, well, you need to write about this. Are they starting to come around to the fact that, oh, well, wait, how many iPhones can Apple potentially sell in 1 year? So while I appreciate what they do, and they're very smart at what they do about looking at macroeconomic factors for Apple's share price, that share price makes no difference to Apple, and it makes no difference to the user.
Well, isn't there an argument that Apple needs a strong share price, or, okay, you're going to ridicule me for this, or Apple will go out of business and we don't get the next iPhone?
Well, they don't really, right? I mean, companies are private all the time, and we've reached a point where Apple's going to make just an insane pile of money that Tim Cook can swim around like Scrooge McDuck. Right. And what does it matter if Apple's made $105 billion this quarter, or $104 billion, or even $80 billion? What does it matter?
Well, yeah, but there's a concomitant thing that Apple has no reason to care about anything at all. It just goes doing what it does.
That's a true statement. Like, we keep saying that Apple can wait forever for whatever it wants to do, and it's true. It has a flexibility that other companies don't have, but it doesn't have it because of the share price.
But it got there by making devices that people want. And ultimately, if it stops doing that, it will kind of go out of business again. So,
well, if Apple does not make one more iPhone sale today forever, they've got enough cash on hand to run the company for 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, but would they be happy
sitting around? I don't know. I mean, I just assume Tim Cook goes around life happy just because of, how things are going. But I mean, the point is here is Apple Insider is a user-centric site. Yeah. Right? Like, we just built a huge piece about how you can save money and make your own SSD. Right.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, actually, let's just take that as a cue, because that was something I definitely wanted to ask you about.
Oh, okay.
I have a Mac Studio. I bought it with as much storage space as I could, but that's barely anything, and I am running out of space all the time. Cheap SSDs, can't I just go buy a cheap one and plug it in and that's done?
You can, right? That's the easy way to do it. That is I just want to buy a box. I want to plug it in. I want to be done. We review a lot of those. Like I reviewed a SanDisk desk drive, 4 gigabytes, nice storage, 10 gigabits per second, decent enough speed, $250. For that same $250, you can buy that same drive. You can put it in an enclosure, and you can have speeds 4 times that. So you can very easily just buy a box off the shelf, but you're not necessarily going to get the best value for doing that. In the interest of full disclosure, I've been building my own drives for, 10,000 years.
Right.
Thereabouts, since man was pounding rocks together, I've been putting drives in enclosures.
And using magnetic media in some way. Yes, okay. As long as that, yeah.
So it is almost always the most flexible way to add more storage to your computer, either permanently or temporarily. Like in this office that I'm currently roasting in an undisclosed location in Texas, right. I have 2 Mac Studios. One of them is my working machine. That is, you're listening to me through right now, in fact. And the other is a test bed machine that I test all my AppleInsider stuff, all my review stuff on. And I've got literally 10 hard drives attached to it in one enclosure. So you could do that. You could buy this 10 drive enclosure, and you could buy the 10 drives from the manufacturer, and that's going to from the in one shipping box, and it's going to be a $6,000 box. Like the Western Digital, I tested a Western Digital enclosure, 52 terabytes, and it's $2,000. Right. That same 52 terabytes can be bought as bare drives in an enclosure with the same speed delivered for $1,000-ish.
And that's better, right? I see your point there. But
support is an issue, right? That's the difference.
That was going to be my next thing. Yeah.
When you buy these things separately, you have, if the drive fails, you're dealing with one company for the drive, and you're dealing with another company for the enclosure if that fails. So you are your own support if you do this. But I think if you're listening to the AppleInsider podcast, you're an AppleInsider reader, I think you probably got a good handle on the situation.
Well, I would say I'm a long-term Mac user, but sitting here in a secret, it's not that secret, but I'm trying to match you, a secret location in England where actually it's very cold. I have one Mac Studio on my desk, and actually I have nothing plugged into it. Sorry, I just looked around there and I realised I have 3 large drives, one of which has died, another one has my Plex server, and I think the other one is a backup of the Plex server, but none of them are connected in yet because I just keep rearranging my office. It seems to me that it's always going to be easier to get as much internal storage as you can and not have to worry about it once the pain of paying is doing it.
It is easier, but Apple's storage prices are insane. I appreciate that, again, it's one box, one service situation. But I don't even remember the last time I bought a Mac and intentionally increased the internal storage. Because it's just, you look at the model you want to buy, I usually get a little bit more RAM just based on the stuff that I do.
Yeah.
But I would rather spend the money on RAM because I can't add that in any way after the fact than on internal storage with Apple's prices. 4 terabytes for Apple's, between $400 and $800. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this in the past because over the years I had such a bad experience with getting, it would have been an Intel Mac Mini, and I bought the least possible.
The 128
storage.
Gig version. I remember that one. Mm-hmm.
That was, I was staggered. I assumed when you don't have much storage, after a while, you have to delete things. Fine. And I would do that. But what I didn't appreciate was that there came a point about a year in, I think, where by the end of a day, the Mac was slowing down so much that between hitting the save button and it actually saving a document, it could be 11 minutes because something was running so low. And I had spent the morning clearing out space. So I'm frightened of too much space now on the internal drive, and I go as high as I possibly can.
One of our users in the forums actually mentioned why that's the case. Apple does not do well when a drive is almost full. That's the case in Windows too. But we're not going to get into it here because it's an interesting tech dive about how SSDs work. But please, William is going to link the SSD piece in the show notes. Please take a look at that and dive into our forums and take a look at what one of our readers have said about the trim command. And all will be told.
Oh, right. Oh, I will. I've read the article, but I haven't read the forums yet. Thanks. Okay. One small question about this, though. Again, this is I always do this with Wes, my own personal interest. I have a nice Mac Studio. I would like more storage in it. I keep seeing articles about third-party upgrades for the M4 Mac Mini getting storage. But right. I haven't seen, I haven't seen one for the Mac Studio. Is there one? And two, did that all work out all right over the long term?
So right after the Mac Mini came out, people realized that the storage was slotted for the first time using Apple's own connector and so forth. And the M4 and the M4 Pro Mac Minis had slightly different forms on the drives. The M4 Mini one came out first, and it's been great. There are good upgrades and bad upgrades. There are drives you can buy on AliExpress, which you should not do.
Right.
And there are drives that you can buy for a bit more from some of the vendors. Like, for instance, the 2 terabyte SSD drive that I have in the Mac Mini is about $329. It's about half of Apple's price on that. It takes a little bit of intestinal fortitude to crack open your plastic Mac Mini. But it's, as long as you're careful and it's easy, and have a second Mac, it's easy enough to do because you have to do a firmware resurrection on the drive from another Mac.
Sorry, I thought you meant having a second Mac, so the one you're working on is expendable. But I get you.
Yeah, I mean, yes, in theory, you would need a second Mac if you broke something in your Mac Mini. But the same companies have, for the most part, they have Mac Studio versions going back all the way to the M1 Mac Studio.
Oh.
So it is a similar process. It's a lot of plastic tabs and a lot of little tiny screws, and as long as you keep track of things, you'll be fine.
Okay.
I've not done it yet. I'm talking to a vendor right now about providing us a review sample in a rare instance of something that you probably have to keep after the review. Right. And we'll see how that goes. But yeah, they do exist for the Mac Studio. It is doable, but it's another support pinch point, right? Yeah. Like this M4 Mac Mini, I kept the drive because if it ever has to go back to Apple for replacement or service, then the old drive has to go back in. And They're still going to be fussy at me about it, even though they can't technically do anything about it unless I've broken something with it. And the same goes with the Mac Studio, which is a slightly more involved process. If something goes wrong, you can't just bring your Mac Studio with an upgraded drive back to the store and say, fix it, please. This isn't 2001 where Apple expected you to swap out drives.
No, I get that. I'd forgotten that they ever did. Mine's gone in two different directions here. The selfish one first. Do I need special tools to do it to my Mac Studio, or a special environment, a clean room kind of thing?
No, it's still something you probably don't want to be drinking your coffee over it. Don't do it when you've got a head cold and you're sneezing. Don't let your cat come in and start touching things. But you can do it on a desk with a set of Torx screwdrivers and, honestly, a paint scraper, a sharp paint scraper.
All right, cool, thank you. Second thing is, why do you think Apple made them slottable this time if they didn't think people were going to go do this?
Oh, it's just manufacturing. It's they have one motherboard now for the Mac Mini instead of 10.
Okay, so
it goes back to our initial point. It is all about supply chain efficiencies for a device that doesn't sell as many as the MacBook Pro, for instance. So with the MacBook Pro, they don't have a problem having multiple motherboards because they're going to sell 8 times more of them or so than they are the Mac Mini. So this is just a case of just making one motherboard for the Mac Mini for the non-Pro, and then another one for the Pro.
I'm just surprised Apple didn't, I don't know, add something to Mac OS or firmware or something to block this kind of thing. It seems unusual for them to think, nah, whatever. This is cheap.
I don't think they care enough. I don't think it's something that I think they looked at the slot, said, this is probably get reverse engineered. Yeah, that's fine.
This episode is brought to you by Square. Your favourite neighbourhood spots run on Square. Square is about all of those businesses in your neighbourhood, the little stores or the chains or franchises that are more than just more faceless outlets. Here where I am in the UK, for example, we have a little convenience store that I keep calling our 7-Eleven, even though actually it's independent and it's open something like 6 a.m. to 10 p.m, but it's ours, it's in the community. Or there's a hardware store by where I went to school, and to this day I know it's going to be cheaper if I bought something from Amazon instead, but I also know that the staff in this store will tell me what I need to buy, because they've done it before. Even when it's meant I put down the more expensive tool, I know they'll make sure I get the right one. Or when I was a child and we all went on holiday to the same spot on England's coastline, there was this one shop that was at the centre of everything. It was the centre of our time there. That is what Square is for. That is who Square is for. It's these businesses, these small ones, that are part of the community. Square brings them contactless payments and point-of-sale options. It brings them to businesses that don't have the national, international corporations behind them that others do. Square works with over 4 million such community businesses all around the world. You can go to square.com/go/AppleInsider to learn more, but before you do, go support your own favourite neighbourhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighbourhood. And thanks to Square for supporting the Apple Insider Podcast. So kind of bridging away from something, a thing I realised I don't get about any external drive system is that you also have to be aware of the speed for it. Internal, I think, is always going to be faster for booting, for example, than external.
Not necessarily, but do continue.
Well, I was just thinking more about speed because something else you've written about that I'm interested in is the new version of the Apple Vision Pro developer strap, which I understand is in some way radically faster than it was before. But I don't know what it does that's faster.
Well, that's a really good question. So the Apple developer strap for Apple Vision Pro has been a developer-only peripheral that allows developers on the Mac to plug in directly with USB-C to an Apple Vision Pro. The old version was USB 2 speeds, which is dumb. So the only thing I can potentially think of on that one is they just wanted USB-C video to go over to the Mac, from the Mac to the Apple Vision Pro. Now, the new strap, which is backwards compatible to some extent, we don't know exactly what yet, moves data 40 times faster at 20 gigabits per second. So, okay. Apple has said that this is intended to move data faster. Okay. Right. We'll see. I've got one coming. I'm curious about a couple things because, all right, so look, Apple Vision Pro came out and I didn't care for it that much. The product seemed like a question's answer for a question that never got asked.
Right.
It felt very much to me like a developer's kit. It still does, honestly. And I kept mine, not specifically for Apple Insider because I have Wes to do that for me, right? He's our Apple Vision Pro advocate on the site. But I kept it because I'm interested in how it will interface with with more grunt. Like, for instance, my gaming PC has got a fancy video card in it, and I'm been playing around with streaming Steam 3D games from my PC to the Apple Vision Pro.
Oh, now, hang on. Oh, well, funny you should mention Wes, because last week when we said you were coming on, he was pointing out that he's much more pro Apple Vision Pro, ugly as it was there, than you are. But also, he is the gaming guy, and I clearly am not. But I thought I was aware of games. I did not know you could stream a PC game through Apple. How?
Yeah, it's. I could talk about it for an hour, and I will still come to the same conclusion that it's not fantastic. a kludge. It's developers figuring out how to do it with bad documentation, both on Steam side and Apple side. Ivory, I guess, is I don't even know how to say it. Is the main project. There have been Kickstarters for 3D spatially aware controllers that only kind of work, but now the PlayStation VR controllers work on Vision OS. So it's still kind of hacky and still kind of a kludge. It's not something I'd recommend. Apple decided in their infinite wisdom just put Wi-Fi 6 on this instead of 6E or 7. And honestly, that's kind of irritating. But in theory, this developer strap can move that data quicker and more natively than going over Wi-Fi.
Okay.
So there are some things I'm going to poke around with this from more than a developer standpoint. I'm going to provide this to my developer buddies, and they're going to talk to me about it, and I'm going to use it with IVRY and things like that. So I'm kind of curious about this for two reasons. I'm kind of curious if it's going to help with things like IVRY, and I'm kind of curious if that 20 gigabits per second is more than just marketing and convenience of scale. Okay. Right? Like Apple Vision Pro has got an M5, and I think the only reason why they've upgraded this with just an M5, which is literally all they changed in this, is because they're just not making M2 processors anymore.
Yeah.
I think that's the only reason why. So I have a lot of question marks hanging over my head about Apple Vision Pro and this developer strap and use outside of Apple's walled garden and the use of 3D media through the strap and so forth. And then my follow-up question will be, well, why don't they want anyone to do this streaming on a strap? So we'll see. This is going to take a couple of weeks for me to sort this out. So don't look for this on Monday or anything like that. Look for this toward Thanksgiving time.
Right. So many questions from this. Well, possibly the crudest one then. Is it actually even worth bothering to stream a game to Apple Vision Pro? Why don't you just use the Windows PC it comes on?
Because a Windows PC... Okay, so what I'm specifically referring to are Steam VR games. Right. So games like Star Wars Squadrons are 3D games, not just 3D on a flat screen. It's 3D. In interactive environments is a little generous for what these games still are. Right. But if you think about like Apple's immersive stuff, like Submerged and things like that, that kind of presentation, that kind of environment on some games, not all games. So what I'm not doing is I'm not putting up a virtual screen on my Apple Vision Pro and just playing a game that I would rather play on my monitor anyway. I'm playing these 3D games. So this is an atypical use. And the Apple Vision Pro is still a higher spec headset than most PC connectable headsets are. Those lenses are very nice. The screens are incredible. The audio is not as good as it is on some of the gaming headsets, but that's offsettable. In fact, interestingly enough, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, the dual knit band, you can use the AirPods Pro Max with the Apple Vision Pro.
Oh, right. Okay, so, that feels like totally enclosing your head in multiple layers of material.
You are, but that's kind of the point of VR, right? The entire point of VR is you are in the VR environment and you're not necessarily sitting in your office and you can't hear your cat screaming at you and so forth. Right. So, that's kind of the point. It's good and bad, but I'm not going to really get into the good and the bad of that right now.
Well, I do want to ask about the dual knit strap, but I need to clarify something I'm not clear about. You said you've got the new developer strap coming. Yeah. Does that mean you have to get the M5 Apple Vision Pro?
No, okay. But I don't know what the differences are right now between M5 and M2. Apple says that it works on M5 and M2, but I don't know if the M2 is still going to be limited to USB 2 speeds, and it's just the M5 can get the 20 gigabits per second. The tech documentation is a little sparse on that, but we'll see.
You do sound like you're using it more than I remember you saying before. Are you tempted to get the M5 version?
No. The Apple Vision Pro is still mostly an intellectual exercise for me. I don't think the platform is mature enough. The software has yet to materialize. I'm glad that my enterprise partners are considering it, but they didn't immediately drop everything and say, okay, we need 100 of these. They're thinking about it, which I think is the biggest concern point I have about Apple Vision Pro right now in the market for it. These are Fortune 500 companies I've talked to about the Apple Vision Pro, and the fact that they're thinking about it.
Yeah. Although, funny you should say enterprise, because that immediately makes me think, isn't there this fantastic Star Trek experience on there that I really want to try someday.
Yes, the Roddenberry archive on Apple Vision Pro is incredible. I have used screenshots from it, and it does not do it justice. Walk around bridges, ships you can spin in space. It is incredible. It is by far the best experience I've had on Apple Vision Pro.
This episode is brought to you by Claude from Anthropic. Strangest thing happened to me this morning as I record this. This morning, Google stopped working for me. I mean, it returned barely any results. But that's not the strange thing. The strange thing is that I noticed, because now, whether it's a simple search for, I don't know, the definition of a term, or if it's looking up articles on websites, I don't Google. I use Claude.ai. You know how it's peculiar, isn't it? How sometimes a site makes it really hard to find what you know is on there. It's like the site's somehow resisting you, blocking you. But now, rather than go through the site's own search or directing Google to do it, I just ask Claude. Ask Claude.ai for all articles on a certain topic from a certain site or two. That is now routinely how I will start researching a topic, how I start to feel my way around a subject that I may not know yet. It's how I start thinking about what I'm going to need to know. Claude is the AI for minds that don't stop at good enough. It's the collaborator that actually understands your entire workflow and thinks with you, not for you. So whether you're debugging code at midnight or you're strategizing your next business move, Claude extends your thinking to tackle the problems that matter. Ready to tackle bigger problems? Sign up for Claude today and get 50% off Claude Pro when you use my link, claude.ai/AppleInsider. That's Claude, CLAUDE.ai/AppleInsider. Use that right now for 50% off your first 3 months of Claude Pro. That includes access to all of the features that I've mentioned so far. Claude.ai/AppleInsider. And thanks to Claude from Anthropic for supporting the Apple Insider podcast. This episode is brought to you by Nordstellar. Nordstellar is a threat exposure management platform for businesses. It detects cyber threats against your company and it helps you take control before they escalate. Nordstellar can monitor the dark web to uncover targeted attacks against your firm, your brand, or your executives. Its attack surface management finds external vulnerabilities before attackers exploit them. For C-level managers, it provides faster detection and prioritization. It offers a real-time visibility of risks, and it also strengthens your firm's compliance posture. For your firm's security teams, Nordstellar can provide contextualized insights. It can track adversaries, and it can provide malware logs. For your whole company, using Nordstellar means safeguarding both employees and customers from phishing, identity abuse, or account takeovers. Made by the team behind NordVPN, Nordstellar is about proactive protection. Don't wait until your company's data is already for sale on the dark web. Protect your business today with Nordstellar. Nordstellar has flexible plans that scale with your business size, and right now you can unlock a 10% discount on Nordstellar with the coupon code AppleInsider-10. Go to nordstellar.com/AppleInsider. That's nordstellar.com/AppleInsider and use that coupon code AppleInsider-10. That's 1010. And thanks to Nordstellar for supporting the Apple Insider podcast. Well, putting aside that, because I don't see how I can get to it unless I get a very specific demo at an Apple store again, I know that were I to use an Apple Vision Pro, I would be using it for the Mac so that I could have Mac screens on it. Mm-hmm. I quite fancy that idea. And a apparently big thing about the new version of the Apple Vision Pro is that it's, I was going to say doubled. I know it's increased the refresh rate of the Mac. What do you call it when you have the Mac screens on it, like a virtual Mac?
Yeah, the Mac display on Apple Vision Pro, it was capped at 60 hertz before. Now Apple says it will go up to 120 hertz, but they did not. Apple is incredibly vague when I ask them questions about things. They always are. It's like I don't have a good literary metaphor for it right now, but it's you kind of have to read the tea leaves a little bit to see what they're saying, even when you ask them a very direct question. And I understand why they do that. It's not just Apple that does that. It's every company I've ever spoken to from a PR perspective. They are very careful not to say something incredibly firm.
Well, actually, I could tell you, I once had an embarrassing thing with a company where the question I asked in the middle of like a launch of whatever it was, they told us all about this thing. It was a GIS mapping software stuff. And I asked them, how much does it cost? And not only would they not tell me, but the whole room looked at me like, how dare you ask such a awful, slummy, lower class kind of question. People are strange in companies, I think. At least Apple doesn't do that. They'll tell you how much it costs eventually.
I mean, you actually have a parable about that too. You're at that brief with Apple, and the Guardian's tech editor kept on saying, does this mean you won't ship hardware in the EU?
Yes.
And Apple literally said no, and the Guardian's tech editor went with, and Apple might not ship hardware in the future to the EU if this keeps up, which they never said. And this is why companies get all weaselly with their words, is because they will get headlines like this, which you just kind of, if you were at the brief, you can kind of look at the headline and go, what? Because you were there and you understand, that Apple never said this. But anyway, I digress. Please continue.
Yeah. Well, just stick on the Mac thing, because obviously I asked Wes about that, and he is getting an M5 Apple Vision Pro, which actually surprised me, because I thought before he'd said if it was only M5 he wouldn't do it, but he was tempted by various things, possibly the developer stuff, I'm not sure, but certainly the Mac refresh rate. Well, the refresh rate in general, he said, for when you're kind of looking around, he described it as, he said this is an exaggeration, but there's a slight shearing sometimes when you look very quickly, and that should remove this. But with the Mac, 60 to 120 hertz sounds like it should have been 120 hertz before. Was the Mac rubbish on the iPhone, on the Apple Vision Pro before?
No, I'm still concerned about this because ultimately the Apple Vision Pro is still on Wi-Fi 6.
Right.
Wi-Fi 7, even if you don't have full Wi-Fi 7 rolled out in your entire network, there are some architectural advantages that devices with Wi-Fi 7 have over Wi-Fi 6. And I am concerned about bandwidth on this, right? So you have a 4K 60 screen, and it takes X amount of compressed bandwidth because it's being compressed on the way to the Apple Vision Pro and being uncompressed when it arrives in the Apple Vision Pro. Mm-hmm. And regardless, when you go to 4K 60, you're looking at about twice the data that's being sent in the same unit of time. So if you've got a Wi-Fi 6 network and it's congested, you're going to have more problems at 4K 60 than you had at 4K. Excuse me, I misspoke. So if you've got a Wi-Fi 6 network, you're going to have more problems at 4K 120 than you had at 4K 60. So great, the hardware can do it, but there are other considerations like network bandwidth to keep in mind here.
It's just still making me think I'd rather have an actual Mac screen.
Yeah, I agree. Wes uses the virtual screen all the time, and I know he loves it, and I know he adores it.
Yeah.
Great. That's his workflow. It's not my workflow. But I don't see where for situational awareness, and I don't see where for operational awareness that not using a virtual display on Mac is better. It seems to me that, so I've got, what I'm staring at right now on my desk, I've got two 32-inch LG 4K displays on my desk. The one on the left is my variable one. I have it connected to a couple different things, including the PC that I talked about before. And the one on the right is just Mac only. The only thing that will ever be on that screen is the Mac. Mm-hmm. And I don't see where that's not better. I don't have to deal with tearing. I don't have to deal with network connectivity other than the internet as a whole. But that's, again, it's just a workflow thing. I don't think Wes is dumb for wanting to use Apple Vision Pro. It's just his workflow that I just don't understand it.
Well, it's not that I don't understand. I'm not with you on having two displays because I find the borders between them too distracting. So although I have a regrettably low resolution monitor, I have this sweeping wide thing that I like a lot. If I were looking at this in Apple Vision Pro, can I just stretch out a Mac screen to be as wide as I want?
No, you're still constrained. Okay. So the display itself, you can make it huge if you really want. You don't have unlimited field of display on that. You still have to. The display is still anchored in space, so you can't. You're not all of a sudden inside a wraparound Mac display. At least not today.
All right. Well, in that case, when Wes is back, I'll just nod at him. Like I always do. That was a very personal question, but I've got one more personal question.
Mm-hmm.
As we record this yesterday, my new M5 iPad Pro arrived, and I got to tell you, I had a nightmare overnight. I woke up sweating that I had in some way bent the iPad, taking it out of the box. And of course I hadn't, but It was a really, really bad dream. And in fact, because of it, I've got Apple Care Plus for the first time in my life. Plus, they do the monthly version now, so it seemed more doable. But M5 iPad Pro, first impressions, I am astonished how good it is at everything. But one thing, I can't work out if this is imagination or not, but last night I was cooking, I had the iPad Pro showing Paprika, the recipe app, and it was playing music in the background over my AirPods, and I promise you, my AirPods Pro sounded better. I noticed that they were better than from my iPhone or my previous iPad. Is it possible that there's a Bluetooth benefit to this, or is it just genuinely me trying to justify spending all this money?
There could be. I don't know enough about your specific settings and specific environment to say for sure, but here's the thing with Bluetooth, right? You can have Bluetooth whatever. You can have on any given device, you can have Bluetooth X. But that doesn't mean it's exactly the same as Bluetooth X on another device. There's things called errata, which in the Bluetooth protocol, which get changed with time, and the Bluetooth SIG doesn't necessarily increment the version number. So while I haven't looked at it directly yet, it's theoretically possible that Apple has implemented a higher errata, which is making streaming to your AirPods better, but I haven't seen a lot of first-hand accounts of this, so it's possible, but I can't say for sure.
I think I need to do more testing, just like I've realised. Yeah, I've now got to rewatch every favourite film because it looks so much better on this. We watched Slow Horses last night on the TV set, and just for comparison, I started the same episode afterwards on the iPad, and I don't want to watch it on TV anymore. That's how much better the screen. Yes. Okay. Wes invented a thing on the AppleInsider podcast called Controversy Corner, and I don't think we really need that this time, but I do want to touch on a couple of legal things, and as ever with legal stuff, one has to be careful about things. But I'm curious about an odd development in one, and I know you have more experience in all of this because you've covered these things longer than I have. It's the ongoing case that John Prosser is being sued by Apple. Basically over leaks. It's a bit more involved than that. The report that came out first this week was that he has failed to do whatever his half of the defence is, and Apple has got the courts to say, well, tough, really. The case is going on ahead. But then immediately afterwards, Prosser himself has come out saying this is not true. He is in active discussion, I think was the phrase for it. Have I got that right? What's going on?
I mean, that sounds like the sequence based on the talking heads in here. We don't. So we've got what we know for sure is we've got the court documents where Apple has requested for things to go on anyway, and we've got Prosser saying that he's in active conversations with Apple. Both these things can be true. So a long time ago, AppleInsider was sued by Apple for leaking information about a FireWire microphone breakout box that was called Asteroid. I wasn't here. I was. It was more than a decade before I joined AppleInsider. Yeah,
you were in nappies. Yeah, you're in nappies, and you're bashing stones together to make external SSDs.
No, well, I mean, I was in my 30s, but yeah. So Apple won. Excuse me. Let me go. So AppleInsider won because of First Amendment press protections and the fact that Apple and PowerPage, I think it was, didn't do anything to get this information. They didn't pay the leaker. They didn't say, hey, we'll give you money if you give us this information. They just were given the information. And Steve Jobs lost his goddamn mind. But, Steve does that or did that. What's different here is the allegations are that Prosser paid the guy to leak this information. The guy then gave this information, then turned over on Prosser, and now here we are. So there is a legal difference, albeit slight, between paying for the information and not paying for the information.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on here. I suspect this is going to end not in a court case, but in silence. I don't think Apple wants to expose the internal workings of Apple. If Prosser gets an attorney worth a damn, and I'm sure he has, I don't think that Prosser wants to go to court and a court says, okay, fine, in the current environment with how free speech is being interpreted, you owe $26 million to Apple or whatever it is.
Right.
I also think it's going to be incredibly hard for Apple to prove that somebody saying something about how iOS 26, which at the time we all thought was iOS 19, was going to look differently. It was going to have liquid glass. Not sure how Apple's going to prove that they were damaged in any way by that. So we'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out. It is, you know what else? You know what bores me more than earnings, William?
Well, it could be a long list. How do you feel about white chocolate? Because that's a big thing with me. Or orange iPhones. That's another one. No?
Yeah, it is. But we'll get to the orange iPhones in a minute. But what bores me more than Apple earnings are lawsuits involving Apple.
Oh, right.
So
okay.
I am very user centric with what I like to see on Apple Insider, and this doesn't. It's not entertaining. It's not fun. It's just so and so is suing so and so because fill in the blank, patent troll, because misuse of patents, because they just feel aggrieved one day. It's just dull. But anyway, do continue.
Well, actually, I'm not going to continue on this line. I was going to talk about the fact that, you'll see it in the show notes. There's a link there for a piece about how judges seem to be more sympathetic to Apple in the ongoing App Store appeal thing. But that's probably it. That'll do. Details in the story. Let's not bore you, Mike. Let's instead go to the orange iPhones because I cannot abide them. And I read a story this week saying bits of them, the plateau part was turning pink. And I thought, good, pink is better. But someone else pointed out that doesn't this mean the resale value is going to be hit, the trade-in value later?
So Oliver Haslam right now is writing a piece about how aluminum anodization works.
Oh, right.
And I'm going to tease that a little bit right now. So a lot of other venues have said, well, very clearly they've wiped down their device with the solvent, and that's why it's turning this color. I don't think that's the case here. I think that there is an issue with the anodization in a small amount of units. I think that the end process, which for lack of a better term and grossly simplified, so don't crawl up my butt about it, is the hardening off of the anodization. I think that is weak on some shipped cases. Okay.
Oh, so not a universal issue.
Right. No, this is not universal in the least. So I think in these people who have these iPhones with the weaker anodization finalization, I think that they're exposing it to sun, not solvents. And I think that's what's doing the bleaching. I think that the dye is oxidizing because of solar exposure and not because people are wiping it down. So I think what's happening with the wipe down thing is when you see that somebody has wiped something down with a solvent, it's really screwed something up. You can see it's not even. It's not uniform like it is in the pictures that we've seen. It's the only thing that's going to give you that uniformity is either a complete submersion in some kind of bleaching liquid, which I don't think has happened here, or sun exposure.
Right.
So I think that's what this is. So we'll see with time. Apple is capturing units that have this, meaning when you bring it into service, they are taking your device and they're replacing it with a service device.
Oh, right. Well, that's good.
So, and capturing is very specific to Apple. What that means is if you see this failure, ship it to our engineers and we'll look at it.
Right.
Notably, they did this. They've done this a few times in the past few years. Sometimes it turns into something, sometimes it doesn't. The times it has turned into something are the butterfly keyboard and the flex cable on the 13-inch MacBook Pro. And both of those ended up having repair extension programs associated with them. So, but don't get excited. I think this is probably in less than 10,000 of these devices. On the other hand, if you're the one affected, that feels like it's universal.
Yes. But if it's solar related, then orange iPhone users should move to the UK where we don't do that kind of sun-like thing. Okay, I'm hearing you.
And they should absolutely stay out of Texas.
Okay, right. Everybody's welcome round to mine for a biscuit, but don't show me your orange / pink iPhone. A few things I want to talk about the future for it, starting with one that actually I know Wes is going to be entertained by when he comes back. Previously on the AppleInsider Podcast, Wes has been very dismissive of the whole idea of any folding devices from Apple. He thinks actually, well, he says the moment has passed, it's never going to happen, but more explicitly, he said guaranteed there will suddenly be news that, I think he said the folding iPhone would be delayed, but what we've had this week is the folding iPad may have been delayed until 2029. Do you think that's reasonable, and do you care?
So the folding iPad is a device that we've seen in patents and rumored for 12 years, maybe 13. It has alternatively been an all-screen MacBook Pro. It has been a folding iPad. Who knows what's coming? But I think what's going to happen here is I think that Apple has to prove that people want this and prove that their hinge engineering is going to be what they want it to be, right? Because if you have it on a phone, you've got, let's say, a 6-inch vertical surface with the hinge on it versus on a folding iPad where you've got a 12-inch hinge on this device now. So I think we're going to see this in a smaller form factor like a phone before we see this in an iPad. So 2029 makes sense to me.
But as for the do you want one kind of thing, I'm tempted.
I don't know. This very much feels like something I would have to see it to decide if I want it. I've seen there have been some PCs at Consumer Electronics shows. I don't know if any are shipping that are all screens. It doesn't. I'm not immediately like, yeah, I've got to get that. So I'm not in that camp on that.
I was saying to Wes that I saw a video somewhere of a Huawei folding PC that it just, yes, please, I want that. But it was running Windows, so yeah, maybe not so much. Okay. There's a story also about the future, a bit sooner than that, which honestly threw me because it was originally reported in a South Korean publication, and trying to understand the machine translation, it just honestly threw me. You had to tell me what it really meant, which is to do with the iPhone 20 and its anniversary, which may come out more or less on the actual anniversary of the iPhone, so June instead of September. Does that seem? It doesn't seem particularly worth. I mean, Apple didn't try to hit the June date for the iPhone 10. Would they care this time around?
I don't know. It's hard to tell. I don't think that they would want to short cycle the iPhone Pro cycle like that.
Oh, good point. I didn't think of that.
I think that I think that it will be in September. Now, what we are expecting to see is we're expecting to see the iPhone 18 not in the fall of next year, but in the spring the following year. But that makes more sense given how phones are sold as it is. Right now, like we said at the top of the show, the Pro phones will carry the day for the first couple of months, and then the non-Pro will carry it for the rest of the buying cycle. So why not just release that after the Pro phone is done?
I do remember there was a few years when Apple would bring out a kind of mid-cycle replacement for the base iPhone in some shockingly different colour. I'm guessing if we get more of the E models coming in the spring and the regular models move to it, those brightly coloured days are gone.
I think so, and there's a couple different reasons for the bright colors being gone. Some of it is the anodization process. It's harder to do high saturation with anodization than it is in plastic, for instance.
Sorry, my mind went there to what would we get instead? And of course what we're getting instead is the iPhone 18 range. And there's a story I wrote this week about the cost of the processor for the A20, it should be, in the iPhone 18 is going to cost apparently quite a lot more to manufacture. But the more I looked into it, it looks like it's probably going to cost around $70 to Apple instead of maybe 45 to 50, something like that. The story I was reading was Apple will pass this price on to users, but you pointed out to me that processor prices have been rising for years and Apple hasn't. So is this a shrug or a calamity? More Apple is doomed.
It's a shrug. It's a cost of doing business. What's more impactful to Apple's prices in the next couple of years is not TSMC raising prices; it's the tariffs.
Right.
How that's going to shake? Let's be clear about the tariffs. How that's going to shake out, I don't know. Yeah. Apple's already said that the first quarter of effective tariffs, they took a $800 million headwind. They're going to take a $1.2 billion headwind in this quarter that most recently passed. Probably a little bit more, I'm going to guess, because I think iPhone 17 exceeded their expectations. So that's more impactful on Apple's pricing than TSMC charging $20 more per processor. I don't see a one-to-one. Has not been a one-to-one correlation on processor prices increasing and iPhone prices increasing.
Well, I tell you what, if someone in Apple procurement wants to contact you and say, no, you're wrong, this is disastrous, or maybe analysts want to defend their rationale for how Apple works, how do people contact you?
The latter group can throw themselves directly into the sun because I will not respond.
Okay.
But anyway, I am on Twitter at Mike_Worthley. I am at AppleInsider every damn day. So if you need me, odds are you can summon me in the forums.
All right, then. And I am on William at AppleInsider.com. And I got to say, I'm a little disappointed. I think counting on my fingers, I've only had to bleep you out once. I might just throw in a few at random times.
I think twice.
Okay.
I think twice, yeah. Fun fact, I think that R2-D2's language in Star Wars is English, and he's just so vile. They just had to beep him out constantly.
Okay. As I understand it, actually, I learned this week that, what's the name of the guy? Ben Burt, that some of those bleeps are actually his voice that have been altered in some way. I don't know how many, but apparently some. I saw a little documentary about ILM and sound design that was quite interesting. So now, of course, you want to know, what did he say originally?
Today I learned.
Yeah. But anyway, while I go off to search for the script to Star Wars, which I actually do remember reading once, and it's very hard to read on the page, let's just say that's it for this edition of the regular AppInsider podcast. Because remember, we're continuing in just a moment with the extended and the ad-free AppInsider Plus. Plus, there's also, of course, every Monday, more in AppleInsider's HomeKit Insider. But for now, thank you very much for listening. Thanks to our sponsors, Square, Claude by Anthropic, and Nordstellar. Thanks to you, Mike, and thanks to everyone for listening. We'll be back, Wes and I will be back next week.
Thanks, everybody. Talk to you later.